Sorry, make sure your chat feature is still open.
Well, hello and welcome to another exciting episode of your program, Zoom Hope Live. We are here ready to have a very informative, interesting, and of course, exciting discussion as we delve into the topic burnout. Time. We're going to have a great time. We're going to delve into the old topic of burnout in the helping profession right here on Zoom Hope Live. And we know you have been waiting on us, so we are here right now. So how has things been going with you, London?
Oh, how have things been going for me? Listen, this topic is for me. Okay, this topic that we are discussing today. I am here as a co-host, but I need these panelists to minister to me that in the helping profession, it has been crazy, right? And running to and fro, trying to minister to people. It's like ministry has increased during this pandemic, during this what's going on in America with police brutality and the protesting that's happening. I mean, things have just become that much more intense over here. And so I really, really look forward to hearing from our panelists as we discuss burnout in a helping profession.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to that because as we came on earlier and we were going through to make sure we have all our T's crossed and our I's dotted, today we will have an opportunity to really interact with each other as you and I would before we come on, because today was so hectic. So sometimes, you know, burnout is inevitable. And we need to know exactly how we are to really operate when that happens, or even to prevent ourselves perhaps from that happening. The question is, who helps the helper? And the panelists we have today, Zoom Hope is just intentional to connect generations today and infuse hope within that very specific context. So before we get into this, I'm wondering if there's anything that you like to share for our viewers to do, because so far we realize that there are over 20-something thousand people who would have passed through this page, but you have not joined the family. You have been coming, but we want you to join the family. London, please speak to our people.
I mean, you just said it already, right? We're asking that if you're watching, please subscribe to the YouTube page, that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, but you also like the Facebook page of Zoom Hope Live. We do these every week, and just so that you can get the notification, you may or may not want to watch it in that moment, but we are asking that you go ahead and subscribe, that you subscribe to the YouTube, that you like the Facebook page, and that I also want to let you all know that we take live questions. And so if you have a question that you would like to ask one of our panelists, there's something that you've been just wrestling with in your own mind, or you just need clarification, please make sure to submit those questions in the comment section. Okay, put those questions in there, and we will do our best to get to as many questions as possible. So like, subscribe, share, right? Those that have already been blessed, there's people who come on week after week, and many of you have been blessed. And so since you know that what Christ has been doing through this ministry, I invite you to share it on your page, share the link onto different pages that you may be a member of, different groups and so on and so forth, so the maximum amount of people may be blessed by the discussion that we're going to have today.
Okay, so we are going to go right into letting you know who we have here as the panelists. I know you have seen the poster, so you'd have seen the faces, see the name, but of course there's a little bit that we'd like for you to know about them beyond the scene. But by the way, we have just started our Instagram page. So we want you to Zoom Hope Live Instagram as well. and we want to really impact the entire world. So let's get into finding out who we have here with us as our panelists. Let me go first. We have Ibunkun, who is an attorney who has dedicated her career to fighting injustice, what a time, and inequalities in the criminal justice system. She relocated to, along with her family, to the United States of America from Nigeria. When she began her college education at the Sam Houston State University, and that is in Texas. She earned her criminal justice degree and received a law degree at the Texas Tech University. And it did not stop there. This is someone who really believes in education. She is currently a public defender who views indigent defense as a calling to stand with the defenseless, to battle a system that is stuck up against them. And that's really, to me, it's like echoing the sentiments of who Jesus is. Ibunkun has raised through the rank to supervising attorneys across the Eastern New Mexico. When she is not fighting in the justice system, yeah, she has something that she's also doing. And that is working along with youth and young adults, connecting them. She is an adjunct professor at the university in New Mexico teaching criminal justice classes. And she also serves with the youth and young adult department in her church, mentoring and equipping young people towards becoming the best, I said the best version of themselves, not someone else, but the best version of themselves as children of the Most High God. She also enjoyed driving along the long roads of the United States, but this is profound. Ibunkun, she goes with these. This is so much, there is so much good in the worst of us and so much bad in the best of us, that it will behooves any of us to find fault in the rest of us, by James Adams. So welcome Ibunkun as we are on Zoom Hope Live.
Yes, 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 yes. Sorry, go ahead, Ibunkun, you were saying something?
I just said thank you. It's good to be here.
Yes, yes. And so I'm super excited about our panelists. I know most of them, and the one that I don't know, I'm getting to know. And so I'm really, really excited. Ibunkun is someone who really, really embraced me when I first came to Lubbock. And I didn't know nobody. And the next person is Wale, who just so happens to also be the cousin of Ibunkun. And I am going to tell you a little bit about him. And so Wale is currently a student at Andrews University working on his Master's of Divinity degree. He was formerly the senior pastor of the Prince Emmanuel All Nations Seventh-day Adventist Church in Bowie, Maryland, in Bowie, Maryland. He is also currently working on his certification as an Adventist chaplain. So he's working on his CPE, clinical pastoral education, for those of you who know about that. Wale has ministered in many arenas, which include the foster care system, prisons, nursing homes, homeless populations, in schools, and most recently in the Juvenile Detention Center. Wale is dedicated to Christ and wants to honor him with his whole life. He earnestly loves God and loves God and all of his people. And so, Wale is going into these areas, going into these places where people are hurting, and is professing the love of God to them. Welcome, Wale, to Zoom Hope Live.
Thank you. It's my pleasure being here, and I appreciate y'all inviting me to be a part of this experience.
Yes, yes.
Awesome, awesome. So we now have Anif Gentiles is our next panelist, and she believes that a child's well-being is the function of the adults. Didn't only say parents, but the adults. The environment, the opportunities, and the love given. She aspires to make those elements harmonize for every child that comes through her office. Anif graduated from the Rice University with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and from the University of Texas, Austin with a Master in the School of Psychology. She is a practicing specialist in the School of Psychology and works to better the academic, behavioral, and the mental health of students in special education programs. Anif is new in the field, and she is hoping that her sheer freshman energy and hopefulness will carry her through a PhD program before burnout occurs. So welcome to Zoom Oak Live, Anif.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to join in.
Yes, yes. All right. And then our last guest was certainly not least, Colin Major. Colin Major attended West Indies College High School, as well as Oakwood College, now Oakwood University, where he obtained a BA in psychology, and La Sierra University with an MA in counseling. He also earned a postgraduate degree in student personnel services with an emphasis in counseling from Virginia Polytech Institute and State University, USA. He is married to Linda Major of the Bahamas, who works at the Bahamas Information Services. Colin is a former vice president of student affairs at the College of the Bahamas, now University of the Bahamas. He has also served there as the director of counseling. In his current work as an academic counselor, Colin works with at-risk students and helps them discover and fulfill their purpose and maximize their potential. We see a lot of commonalities in these panelists, don't we? And also as a vocalist, recording artist, panelist, arranger, and composer, Colin has been involved in music all of his life. His style is diverse, and he has a smooth baritone voice that is chief among the instruments of his ministry. Just last week, we talked about the ministry. We had Whitley Phipps on, right? And we talked about the baritone voice. And so we have another baritone here with us today as we talk about burnout in the helping profession. Welcome, Colin, to Zoom Hope Live.
Thank you. It's so good to be here and to be a part of this entire group of individuals.
Yes, yes. So glad to have you. So glad to have you. Okay, and so let's just get into it. Question number one, right? You've heard from us, you've heard about our panelists. Now we are going to get into this discussion.
And remember, think up your questions and send them to us, and we will get them in Zoom Up Live.
Yes, for sure. Once again, you can submit your questions in the comment section, and we will do our best to ask our panelists to answer them. And so question number one, very general question, right? What is your professional opinion? Because I'm talking to professionals here, all four of you. What is your professional opinion and your personal experience with burnout? What is your professional opinion of burnout, and what is your personal, do you have any personal experience with burnout? And so if we can have Colin, if you may answer this first question.
All right. Well, first of all, you don't wake up in the morning and suddenly have burnout.
Yeah.
Something that creeps up on you over a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
Burnout is real. It's not something that's in your head. Sometimes when you tell folk that I'm experiencing burnout, you're just kidding around. No, it's something that is real. It's very destructive, and it has a lot to do with what I call chronic imbalance in our lives. It usually starts small and then it gets bigger and gradually over time. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes it takes decades for it to happen. And it is something that we oftentimes are not even aware of. We sometimes mask it and we call it something else, but the symptoms are real.
Oh, I'm just tired, right?
Yeah. You get grouchy with people, you have a short fuse. All of those things are signs and symptoms that something is going on. And if you want to talk about my own personal experience, I have been a counselor for many years. I became director of counseling in 1996 for 3 years. Then I became vice president when the position became available. I had no administrative experience per se, but my boss at the time said, I believe you can handle this. All you're doing is putting together all of the services that are involved in helping students. And so I took it on, and I moved from having a staff of 5 to supervise to having a staff of 50, which was very overwhelming. I had 6 departments. I was responsible for admissions, records, financial aid and housing, counseling. I was responsible for student leadership and athletics. So it was a lot to deal with. And my boss told me at the time, he said, Colin, I'm giving you a cell phone. It's to be on 24 hours of the day because your job is the most important job in the university. You're dealing with students and you've got to be available whenever they call. Do you see the stress? The stress?
Yeah, I feel the stress right now on my back, right here. Right.
and over time, that's what began to happen. And when you're new in this area, and all of my colleagues been in the area as administrators for years, and so a part of you is trying to keep up with what they're doing and to demonstrate that you know what you're doing. And so all of those things play a part and take its toll. Didn't know how to manage my time, didn't know how to say no. And I came home and was grouchy with my wife. I was snapping here and there. I began to feel as though, wonder, am I in the right profession? Did I choose the right career? All of those kinds of things went through you. And that was back in 2000. It's 20 years later, and I've matured, and I'm different because I had to deal with that stuff back then and put some things in place. And trust me, it is not a nice thing to go through. And it takes time to get out of it.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. So, as you were talking from the very beginning, what I was made clear in my mind is that we need to define burnout, right? And so you define some symptoms of burnout, and that is being snappy, right? Just saying that you're tired, taking on too many tasks, saying yes too often, right? And so I would love to hear, Anif, if you're willing to expand the definition a little bit of burnout, and also answer this question about your professional opinion of it after you define it, as well as if you have any personal experience. You have to unmute yourself. Yes. Absolutely. All right. We want to hear you.
You would think I'd be used to unmuting myself by now. As for the definition of burnout, I've been defining burnout as an emotional struggle when you've been overworking yourself, taking on too many tasks. And I've seen that there are several stages to it. There's just I'm doing everything stage, and it moves on to the I'm tired of doing everything stage. The third stage would be I feel disconnected and I'm starting to lack empathy for everybody. And then the final stage is that I quit.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I am no longer, I can't do this anymore stage.
Deuces.
Exactly. As for my personal experience, I just got here. Like this next school year will be my first year with a license. But even as I'm getting here, I'm working in a charter school. So what I get to see is people who are finished with the charter school system, but also just done with being a counselor in school. So you see that like people who have hit their 10-year mark in school counseling, this is when they're starting to consider, I can't deal with these children's stories anymore. I can't continue to take on this empathetic load for both teachers, parents, and students. I think I can't keep doing this. I need to go. So that 10-year mark is when you start to see school counselors wanting to leave the profession because they can't deal with the empathetic load. So I'm hoping to get to the PhD before I hit that 10-year mark. But that's just as teachers hit the 5-year mark, and that's when you know whether or not they're going to continue in the field. For school counselors and school psychologists, that 10-year mark is where they start to hit their limit.
Okay, yeah, thank you for sharing that. And so there have been a couple of things that have come up. Wale, I would like for you to answer this additional question. You see how I'm just throwing additional questions, but they're baby questions to the main question, right? So it is, I heard Colin as well as Aneve speak about saying yes, saying no, right, kind of thing, and kind of taking on too much and coming to a point where you're like, I'm done. Well, maybe I shouldn't ask that question yet. Maybe we'll deal with that later. But I kind of want to deal with no, I'm not. Wale, if you can just answer the question of, do you have anything to add about burnout and your personal experience or your professional opinion of it, things that you may have seen, and your personal experience with it?
Oh, definitely. One of the things that I can add to the conversation about burnout is that in the caring professions, a lot of times it's called compassion fatigue. What happens is, I was a pastor, for instance, and so I think I've heard some of the other panelists talk about saying yes, saying no, and so I just call those boundaries, right? And people always want to test your boundaries. They want you to do everything for them. They want you to be available at all times of the day.
24/7.
Yeah, especially if you're single, then they think that you have nothing but time on your hands, and it's really interesting that people will allow, people will push on you what you allow, and so I think it's necessary to set good boundaries for yourself, and even practice saying no, to yourself, or practice saying no to other people. But I think it really affects people who are in the caring profession. My personal experience as a pastor, I think there were expectations, especially me being the young guy at the church. And there was an older, pastor there that he would be there for everything. He always showed his face. He was at every event he was at, and so when I came into that, I was coming into, expectation that was set that I would do the exact same thing. Sometimes.
And don't you have time? You're young, you got energy, you can do it.
Yeah. So at first I tried to accommodate as much as possible. But I realized that was draining me really quick, to the point where I was dragging myself out of bed. In my head, I was like, man, I don't want to go out to do. I just want to spend all day at home. I was working 7 days a week, like 60 hours a week, trying to meet the demand. And then I talked to another pastor, and I was telling him how tired I was. He was like, when's your off day? And I was like, off day? Pastors have off days? And then that's when I started putting a little bit more boundaries. And I said I was off on certain days. And, people didn't really like the fact when you start setting boundaries, but you can reshape expectations when you start saying no. And I think after a while, people understood that I wasn't the previous pastor, but that I was me. And so they started to set their expectations accordingly. And so I think that was my personal experience with burnout.
Yes, that's good. That's good. Ibukun, let's hear from you. So, is there something more that you can add to this conversation about burnout? I really appreciate, Wale, you still kind of included my second question in there about the yes and the no and the boundaries that need to take place. Is there something that you can add to the conversation, Ibukun, about your professional and personal experience on this topic?
Yes. So I'm going to tell you about my I quit moment that I had 2 years into my career.
Wow.
Was I went into this career with the idealistic hope of saving the world because why not? So I get here and I literally tell my clients, you come to my office, you tell me what you need, I got it. Now you go home and you can go to sleep. Now, what that really meant was you just leave it with me. You can go to sleep. I'm carrying it from here forward, right? And so I did that, and I worked very long hours, and I really enjoyed what I was doing. One day I decided to just do it all. So I went to the jail to visit with some of my clients, and I decided, well, I had about 20 of them that I had to see on that Friday. And so, yeah, so all day. So from one client to the next, to the next, to the next, all day. By the time I got to the last one, it was about 7 p.m. Friday evening, and I was done. And so I sit there and I'm talking to this gentleman, right? This guy is known. Everybody knows he's this tough guy, this big bad guy. And he's sitting in front of me and telling me about everything that was going on with him. Wow. And he starts to cry. And I'm sitting there listening, and first I'm shocked that he's crying in front of me. And next, I'm thinking, I just want to go home and go to bed. I don't want to do it anymore. But I had to sit there and I listened. And when it was over, I started to drive home and I was drained. I was done, nothing left except the burdens of these 20 people that I was now carrying. And so I couldn't go home. I started driving around in circles because I wasn't taking all of this home with me. I couldn't do it. I went to the park, I sat there, it took a minute, and then I went home. Then it gets better because that Monday, I now get to court to take care of all these people's cases in some small capacity or the other. Yeah. And I remember standing in front of the judge. My client was standing next to me. And the first thing I'm supposed to do is announce, this is my client, I'm their attorney, right? Say their name. And I stood there and I looked at my client and I kept looking and I was blank. I did not know his name, why we were here, what we were. I stuttered and got through it. And that was my first one on a Monday morning. And I had several more to go. And I couldn't do it. So at that moment, I paused. Thankfully, I had a colleague in the courtroom. I told him, please take care of this, that, and the other for me. I can't. I'll be right back. And I walked out of the courtroom. I went to the bathroom. I'm hyperventilating and I'm crying. I'm like, what's wrong with me? And then I run out the building. I go get some air. I breathe, I pray. I'm like, okay, you can do it. Come on, let's go. And I went back in and got through the rest of the day. But it was in this moment that I found my limit. I was out. It was 2 years, but in indigent defense as a public defender, 2 years of work is for some other attorney, 5-6 years of work that I've squeezed into that time. So that was the moment I realized burnout is real and it's happening to me. And I had to work on balance and I had to work on boundaries from that moment on.
Yeah, wow. I mean, yes, thank you for sharing, right? I mean, that is heavy. And so really quick, something that I'm hearing, and maybe one of you professionals can, may have something more to say about it. But so with my little bit of time, well, let me stop belittling, but I spent some time doing chaplaincy. And in my chaplaincy experience, right, within maybe like the first month, right, it wasn't 2 days, but it was like the first month, I learned this word that Wale just introduced to us earlier is, and that I hear you describing really, Ibukun, is compassion fatigue. That when you take in, right, because burnout, because sure, so we're talking about burnout in the helping profession, but it seems like that within the helping profession specifically, there's this additional dynamic of compassion fatigue, because a person can be burnt out cooking, right? They can be in the back, not having to talk to nobody, and they're a cook, they're a chef, and maybe they're doing too much. They can still get burnt out with what they're doing as cooks.
That's
but
right.
For the helping profession, there's this additional component of empathy, and you get fatigued, and so we call it compassion fatigue. And from
Wow, it seems as if London is breaking up a little bit. But based upon the responses, I think where she's going is that sometimes, because as helping professions, we have that innate desire to care and to reach out, sometimes even expand ourselves beyond ourselves, and it reached to us not caring about ourselves, and that is something for us to look on. So I'm just going to transition. As we know, London will get back. Earlier she was saying that she had some internet challenges, but what are some of the ways you have heard people justify burnout? There's a question I saw on social media that I will bring into this as we interact. But what are some of the ways you have heard persons justify this burnout? And anyone can share, just share across.
I'll go ahead and get this started. And I'm just going to start with my own personal justification. It's always, this is hard work. This is important stuff that I'm doing, and somebody has to do it. And somehow, if nobody's doing it, then I'm doing it. That's my justification, that I have to be conscious about, that I'm just trying to convince myself. Besides also trying to convince myself I'm just tired, I just need a nap. If I sleep for tonight, by morning it's gonna be okay. So those are the justifications that I have, and the professional counselors probably know a whole lot more about that.
That's very important that you have noted that, because sometimes there's always something on the shelf, right? But not because it's there on the shelf. It means, therefore, that I have to make it my responsibility to do that. But many of us, the best of us, find ourselves doing that, and it eventually leads to burnout. Let us cross-discuss some more as we look at this question. What are some of the ways you have heard individuals that perhaps even within our own self justify burnout?
Well, can I speak to that?
Sure.
When I experienced the burnout when I was vice president for student affairs, I was new at it. And when you're new at it, you don't want people to believe that you can't handle something. You want them to believe that you're capable of what you're doing. And so you don't want to fail. And so that was my way of justifying it. I wanted people to see me as competent, as being able to handle it. And you go home in the night wondering whether or not you really did make an impact, because a lot of times you ended up making a lot of mistakes along the way. And it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. And so sometimes we are trying to impress other people. And then what I found out too is I always felt that, I need to help this person. There's nobody else that can help them. And
Yeah.
we believe that we were born to save the world, and there's nobody else can do it. When in actual fact, there's only one savior.
Yes.
And that's Jesus.
Yes. Yes.
We
Yeah.
call it help.
I appreciate that you actually make that contribution to the discussion, and I want really everyone to chime in, right? So I want to even add what I'm seeing on social media. This is by Faith and Alpheus Alec, and this is what he said, and I believe that it's very profound. Said you can get burnout doing good. In fact, most people get burnout without frustration or lack of growth. And then he makes this powerful point. Burnout usually happens when you are on fire. It shows a passion, ultimate drive, etc. So we get burnout doing good.
Exactly.
And sometimes in us saying, you know what, guess what? I want to be good. I want to come off as being someone who is always there. We find ourselves, or you can find yourself into deep waters.
And you know, if I can add something else, you know, a part of what we do that creates a problem too is that as counselors, we tend to identify with the individual too much. We over-identify until we take on the problem as if it is ours.
Yeah.
When I tell my colleagues in my office, I have a little cup. And on the front side of it, it has garbage bin.
Yeah.
And I use that to dump everything in at the end of the day and not take it home. Because we can take a lot of stuff home with us.
Yes.
And what helps me also is when people come in, they often come, I always say, they come in my office with the monkey on their back.
Yes.
And they will say, Mr. Major, we have a problem.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know, before you came in my office, you had a problem. And so my job is not to take the monkey off your back, but it's to help you come up with a solution as you leave my office.
Awesome,
you know,
awesome.
Sometimes we try to solve the problem for the individuals, but our job is to help them to facilitate.
I see, of course, Whale and Anif, and maybe I like Anif to go first, but I see Anif was doing a lot of
Wale.
and wait, Wale. I said Wale. Yes, thanks. So Wale and Anif, you were really agreeing. How can you contribute to this as it relates to persons come up with justifying reasons for their burnout?
I actually, Brother Collins stole one of my reasons right out of my mouth. That we over-identify with the kids that we work with, especially I'm working with children from pre-K to 12. So whenever they come into my office with a difficulty, they've already been adopted into my heart as one of my babies. I did not birth them. I don't have any children. They are not mine. They're my caseload, but they're my babies. So we tend to over-identify with their difficulties. If my child is still having a difficult home life, I want to take them home and fix it. If I can smell that my child smells like they haven't had a bath in a while, now I'm looking around, how do I get you a shower? And you take because we're adults, because we're humans, we're already tuned to take care of small humans. We're already tuned to take care of children. So you want to take that home with you. You're constantly thinking, how am I going to make sure that he has a clean uniform tomorrow? Do his teachers understand the complete impact of what his home life is like? And will they send him back to my office again for difficulties that they should be able to handle in class? Do I need to be down in the classroom helping them figure this out and taking time away from my other projects, from my other students, from my other caseloads? And we just continue to take all these little things in. How can we help here? How can we help there? Taking on responsibilities that belong to other people at the school or belong to other people in your department. And in that way, you start to drain yourself. Like a fire is a fantastic metaphor for this, because a fire can be so destructive, but when a fire is directed in the correct areas, in the correct directions with purpose, a fire becomes an amazing tool. A fire becomes something that is transformative. But if it's just let out into the world with no direction and no purpose, it becomes a wildfire, and wildfires are incredibly destructive.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah, no, that's good.
You know, yeah, my wife, while you're speaking, Anif, she makes this point that burnout, balance and boundaries are important. Sometimes something or someone will eventually feel the burn. And that's important because sometimes in our in our desire to reach across or stretch ourselves, we find ourselves even neglecting and coming from what Colin has been saying, bringing all of this home. So Wale, coming, and I feel good just saying that just now, right?
Yeah, you did good. You did good.
Yeah, so Wale, as a pastor and you know, not only a pastor but a chaplain, how do you do that into not bringing home the baggages from the hospital, from the prison visit, from the board meeting, etc., and couple with that question by Jones Cavella, she asks this question. So how do you not bring it out, bring it home? But at the same time, how do you differentiate burnout from overloads or resentment of duties? Because sometimes burnout can happen because of resentment of duties, or sometimes it will not happen because duties are just totally resented. So how do you create that balance that my wife has just, well, Shakara Green, my wife, has just placed in the chat?
Okay, those are definitely great questions. I think for the first one, where it comes to how do you prevent, yourself from getting there, or I think in the counseling field, one of the things that we do, we talk about bracketing our feelings. And so, what does that mean? That means that as we're having a conversation with somebody, and let's say it's a topic that really triggers us, we have to we are trained to identify and be aware of what's going on with us, right? And so we don't ignore it, because ignoring your feelings is probably one of the worst things that you can do. But we actually just what we call bracketing. So we take note of it, a mental note that, oh, this really upset me, what this person is telling me. And so I make a mental note. And after the visit is over, you do something with it, whether you write it down, whether you go next door to your colleague and you talk about it, if you have a supervisor, whether you bounce it off of them, or even if you have a therapist or a counselor, it's something that you make sure you bracket and you save it for a selected time or a period in time where you can actually process that, so that you don't take it home. Because one of the worst things you can do is bring the heaviness of the caring profession to your house, and so you want to make sure before you get home, you do something with it, so that you're not bringing that heaviness home. Now, the second question, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just want you to clarify the second question again.
Yeah, well, it comes from a comment in terms of creating boundaries. It's all about boundaries, because if there are no boundaries, someone or something will eventually be burnt. Right. So the question from that is, how do you create that boundary?
How do you create that boundary?
Well, you just answered that.
Yes, that's what I say. I think, yes, you would have, in terms of, deal with it before you get home. But even as humans, sometimes you get home with it. Right. But it's important, I believe, to be cognizant of that. Know that, guess what? I am home, but I am still heavy from a heavy day. Exactly. And Ibuku, you talk about 9 visits or 19, something to that effect.
20 in one day. I remember.
No, I do prison visits from time to time, and that's not to represent someone. It's just to go and to speak hope within various situations. But to deal with that kind, and sometimes everyone is different. how do you not bring that home? And when it does come home with you, how do you unwind so that it does not affect the people in your life?
Well, thankfully, when that happened, I lived alone, so that was very helpful. But Wally mentioned something, and I believe Mr. Major mentioned as well, bracketing, putting it somewhere, and knowing that you're going to deal with it, right? I on that day I had to go sit somewhere and take a moment to breathe and remind myself that I cannot solve all these problems right now. And just funny talking about it right now, I'm getting goosebumps because I remember that experience.
Wow.
It was,
Yeah.
it was
Trauma.
dramatic. And learning, and since then I've learned a lot more. First of all, no, I don't do that anymore. No more than 10 a day, and that's if I absolutely have to. But I know that that's my number. But when you get home, realizing and acknowledging that I have dealt with something hard, I'm carrying a lot right now, so that you're cognizant of the way you're dealing with the other people around you. I think that's a priority.
I think, can I add something else to that too? You know, when you have a lot of clients to see during the day, if you don't have any breaks in between sessions in order to catch yourself, then you're in trouble. Normally with my clients, when they come, I say, listen, we have 45 minutes. And when we get to 5 minutes before the end of the session, I will let you know. Now, you have a number of things you'd like to talk about today. Which of these 3 are most important to you? And let them tell me which one, and then we begin to work on those. And then I give my clients homework and things to do. But I had last semester, my administrative assistant had me booked for 5, 6, 7 sessions back to back. And I say, hey, listen, this can't work. I don't have time in between each session to even regroup, take notes, and empty myself of that session before the next one. So you have to build those in. And another thing too, I always have 3 persons in my counseling session: me, the client, and the Holy Spirit. So I always talk to the Holy Spirit before, and then after I say, Lord, this is a lot of stuff to deal with. I know you said, bring all my burdens to you. I can't handle them. I'm going to take them to you, and I trust you to deal with them. And I can leave it with him and don't have to pick it up.
Well, I know we're going to delve in that shortly. But London, I think what has been shared thus far, it's really saying that as a helper, don't believe that you have to do everything. Don't believe that you have to not only do everything, don't believe that you have to do it now. And don't only believe that you don't have to do everything or do it now, but at the same time, don't believe that you're the only one that can do it. And I'm getting all of these strong points from the panelists today. That really makes me excited because I am not only learning and building my own self as a helper, but I know there are persons out there, perhaps not even helper, but you have responsibilities, and based upon your responsibilities, you find yourself going into overdrive too often and resulting in burning yourself and even others around you, and even becoming ineffective within your call. So London, take us into the next question.
Yes, our next question. I mean, I really appreciate everything that's been said. If I can just re-emphasize something that you highlighted from our panelists is this idea that I think so. Okay, so I'm going to use a strong word, but I'm not necessarily applying it to everybody. But I think that we are in danger of this, and that's being arrogant. I think there's a certain level of arrogancy that sometimes plays a part in our burnout, and we justify the arrogancy by saying, oh, well, this person doesn't do it as well as me, or, you know, this person really needs me in particular. And, you know, we tell ourselves these false narratives, but if we really get to the root of it, similar to what was already discussed of self-awareness, then we'll see that at the heart of it, often, I won't say everybody, but often it boils down to a certain level of arrogance, that you think you're better than these other people, right? And I think that as a minister, go ahead.
Yeah, even as you speak about arrogance, the thing that came to my mind is team. And many times what arrogance does is that it takes the team out of the picture. And it's only me, myself, and I.
Yes. And so in transition, as a quick shout out, one of the ways that I ended up as a co-host here on Zoom Hope Live is because there was another female seminarian, right, who was asked to speak on the panel, and she's learned to set boundaries. And so instead of assuming, oh, that she would be the best person for the job, and so she was going to force, you know, time to be on Zoom Hope Live, she called me, right? And I think that we need to practice that more in saying, you know what? Who is someone that I know that can do this? So that can do this, that does this well, because I'm not the best in the whole world. So who can I, and what's the word? If whoever wants to use the word that's in counseling, that there's one word that surmises that. The word is refer, right? Refer. You refer, so that you're not taking on too many things out of arrogance and thinking you're the only one. Okay, moving on. So our third question is, how does the ministry of Christ, right? This is the Sabbath, right? We're all, while this helping professions, I believe that all of us on the call consider ourselves ministers, right? Not that everyone's a pastor, but that everyone is a minister. We're all Christians. We've all been called to be a blessing to people. And so how does the ministry of Christ protect us against burnout? How does the ministry of Christ protect us against burnout? Anif, I would like for you to start this question off for us, please. How does the ministry of Christ protect us against burnout?
So I gave a small talk about this a couple of weeks ago, but the ministry of Christ roots us in a strong place where we are supposed to go and drop all of our burdens off. And it gives us this example in giving us the Sabbath. And then Jesus and Christ also assert themselves in this position. I am where you go to relieve yourself of your troubles. This day is where you spend it relieving yourself of your troubles. You are a helper. You're a modeled helper after I am, but I am the ultimate. I am your root. I am your strength. Don't try to take this on by yourself the way you have been doing this. Don't try to take this on by yourself as your work tends to lead you to, but come and relieve yourself at the feet of Christ. Come relieve yourself at the throne of God.
Yes, that's good. All right, you better be concise, to the point, and dense, you know, like deep. I mean, what I just took away from that, and I was like writing the note, right, so I wouldn't catch it. I wasn't sure how long you would go, but it was the idea that Larry mentioned at the beginning, and that's helping the helper, right? And that the ministry of Christ helps the helper, right? That we understand that we're participants in the ministry of Christ, and that Christ is the ultimate. And then even in the Godhead, they help each other and support one another. And so it's not just on one member of the Godhead more than it is onto the other. And so that's what I hear you saying, that it's so important for us to see that Christ is supreme, and that it doesn't all fall on us. If there's another panelist that would like to answer the same question of how does the ministry of Christ protect us against burnout?
Hope I'm not talking too much.
Okay, after you go, then Wale, and then we would like to hear from Ibukun.
Jesus gave us Matthew 11:28-30. And I like how the Message Bible puts it. Jesus says, are you tired, worn out, burned out? Come to me. Get away with me and you will recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. And that struck home to me because it's in Jesus that we find rest. And if we take that upon ourselves and we use what he says there, there's no way we will carry the burdens in our jobs on us as we do now. We will allow Jesus to help us with our schedules and to find balance and everything in our lives, just as he did.
Yes, no, that's good. Listen, Colin, so earlier I mentioned at the beginning of this that earlier, maybe I didn't. I don't know if we were online or offline, but that I preached today, right? Yeah. And this was one of the texts that I mentioned. It was like the side text. It wasn't the main text. But I really love how you explained that, because something that really, really gets under my skin is when people say, oh, I'm supposed to do all this because God wouldn't give me more than I could bear. Right. And it really, really gets under my skin, because that is to assume, one, there's this thing of predestination, right? So there's this false theology of predestination. But I won't get into that. But it's that this text is saying that, sure, Christ will not give you more than you can bear. But other people can give you more than you can bear, and you can give yourself more than you can bear. And so there's this thing of free will that God is that, yes, burnout is a signal that you have taken on more than Christ intended for you to take on. But it's not to assume that just because it's on your plate that God is the one who put it there, right? And so that's what I just heard you say. Right. Yeah. And I really love it because I'm right there with you. And so Wale, you wanted to add something to the conversation?
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I wanted to piggyback off of there because one thing that I want to make sure that, the viewers are careful of is basically what you were saying, putting things on yourself. And a lot of times we put all of these burdens on ourselves, and then we repeat scriptures like Isaiah 40:31 to ourselves and say, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. And I'm like, yes, if God is the one that is the impetus behind what you do, because if not, then you will go to burnout. And I think one of the things that I love about Christ's ministry, if you really study and look at Christ took a lot of breaks. He was out there doing things, but then he was also in Bethany kicking his feet up with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, just having a good time. Or, he would see that the disciples were burned out. He was burning out. They'll go up to the mountain and just relax. Or they'll go away to a desert place and kind of just chill out. And so, a lot of times we think we're trying to be like the savior, or we have this savior complex. But if we actually had a your complex, we would actually learn how to take breaks, because Jesus took plenty of breaks. I think that's what's important, is to follow his ministry, which he did a lot of work. Yes, he did extend himself, but he was self-aware enough to say, I'm tired and I need to get away. And I think that's what we have to stop telling ourselves, sometimes using scripture as justification for damaging ourselves and telling us we can do more than what God even put on us.
Sing the song, Wale. I'm tired, I'm weak, and I'm worn. Right? That's the song that came to my mind when you said that. And one of the texts also just support, to back up what you're saying, right? Because you in the Bible, you in the Bible that Mark, I want to say it's Mark 6, but it's the story of Mark where Christ sent out the disciples. It's the retelling of Christ sent out the disciples to do a work. I used to quote it to people in the hospital all the time, because they wanted to get out. They have busy lives, burnt out, and they've worked themselves sick, right? Quite literally worked themselves sick. And they're so anxious to get back to the thing that made them sick, that the hospital is oftentimes the place for people to rest. It's sad that sometimes it has to get there because you stress yourself out so much and taking on too much anyway. So this was the text was, I want to say it's 6:30 something, the 6:32, but I should have wrote it down. But y'all go look for it. Look in the Bible, where Jesus, after the disciples went out and were working, Christ said, "Come and rest a while."
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so Christ had them, after they worked, they did what God had called them to do. Christ intentionally withdrew them from the crowds and had them come and rest a while. And that's something similar that Colin is saying, right? That in between counseling sessions, right, you need to rest a while before you take on the next thing, or else you'll burn out. Ibukun, I believe, was it Ibukun or Neef? One of y'all. I think it was Ibukun. Yes. Go ahead. Add to the conversation.
So, growing up in a Christian household, my mother is a nurse, and every morning at devotion, every morning, her patients were number one on the prayer list. Mom's patients have been on the family prayer list all my life. And so as I grew up and got into my own field, it took me a minute to realize, wait a minute, I got to put my client number one on my prayer list too, so that we can remember that it doesn't matter what I do or how much I do, how hard I work, I have to leave them at some point in God's hands and let it, because I can't do it all. And speaking of Jesus's ministry specifically, he took time out not just to rest, but also to reconnect with the Father. So there would be Jesus went and took time to pray. He didn't spend his entire time ministering and healing and preaching. He spent some time with the Father to reconnect and recharge and get re-energized. And if we want to talk about Jesus Christ being burnt out, I think of Gethsemane, where he sweat blood along with water. That would be the extent, the stretch, I think, in Jesus's ministry. And what did he do? He called his friends. It's like, come on, y'all, we need to go pray.
I need you to help me pray.
Y'all need to help me pray.
Deep theology. That's deep theology right now. I could say pastor. I really appreciate that. That's really powerful. Thanks.
Yeah, so that's one thing we learned from Jesus's ministry, that we must also practice. Get help. Let people know I can't do it anymore by myself. I need the prayers of the people around me to support me and carry me through.
Yes. You know, and look, I said that too in the sermon today. So, you know, the Spirit of the Lord is upon us, right? And it was this point, there was this one little thing that I would add. I agree with everything you just said, Ibukun, and that is that because Christ did it in the Garden of Gethsemane, we don't have to, right? That Jesus took all that on once and for all, so that the burden no longer has to be ours, but we can give it unto him, right?
Yep.
All right, y'all preaching. I said y'all was all ministers. You're not all pastors, but y'all all ministers called by Jesus Christ. Pastor Larry, do we have our last question, or do we have any questions from our guests that you would like to ask our panelists?
No, I wouldn't want to go again.
Sorry, I mean, are there any additional questions from our viewers, or do you want to lead into our final question?
No. Before we go to our final question, I see a lot of comments from the guests, but I am not picking up any particular questions. But what you're saying here, I think, is profound. Jesus rest.
Yes.
And you look at Mark chapter 4. Mark chapter 4. It's not only rest. Jesus rests in the storm, right? And sometimes, as helping professionals, we believe that when things, get tough, like now it's COVID-19, it means therefore all rest is over. You just got to go. You got to go. You have to go. If we hurt ourselves, or if you hurt yourself as a helping professional, you will be no good. So I think that's profound, that the panelists have been pointing out this fact that Jesus took the time to rest. But even before we go to the last question, I'm not sure.
I've got something to say, Brother Larry.
Yes, go ahead.
What we are talking about, the term we use in the helping profession is self-care. You have to learn how to take care of self. And those people who don't take care of themselves fail to understand how much God values them. They fail to accept his rest and his love for them instead of martyring themselves as they do, trying to please others, sacrificing sleep and all those kind of things. God, Jesus took care of himself, and we must take care of ourselves so that we can be good to the other people. If you're worn down and all messed up, you're no good to anybody else. So you've got to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of stigma, right? Too. I agree with you, Colin. And I think there's a lot of stigma to the phrase self-care, right? And like selfishness, and sometimes Christians like throw it out. I've heard Christians try to throw it out, right? And I think a more Christocentric or biblical terminology for this same thing that you're expressing, Colin, is refreshing yourself at the feet of Jesus.
There you
right?
go. There
Refreshing yourself at the feet of Jesus. That it's not about necessarily just being by yourself somewhere, but it's about being intentionally in the presence of Christ so that you can be rejuvenated, right? Christ is the one who formed you with his hands, right? That formed Adam and Eve in the very beginning. And so, you know, what people say, I've heard this phrase, you know, if you have a BMW, right, you're going to take the BMW to a BMW dealership. You don't want just anybody working on your car, right? You want to take it to the people who originally made it. And so when you need some tune-ups, when you need some maintenance, right? When you need some refreshment, you need to take yourself to the one who made you. And so refreshing yourself at the feet of Jesus, this is what I hear Colin Major expressing. And so Christians, don't try to count yourself out of getting this refreshment because you don't like the terminology. Okay, it's biblical. Okay, we can change the terminology, but the meaning is the same. All right.
That's right. That's right. No. And just coming out of the whole atmosphere of the helping profession, the helping professional, being connected to Christ, who Christ was. Christ was, of course, he was about the business of restoration for all people in all situations. But we see where Jesus rested. He slept, he prayed, he had fun, he ate, and some of the times we believe, you know, we don't have no time to eat. So coming from that same spirit, please give a message of hope to those who are at risk of becoming burnout, or even those who are experiencing burnout at the moment, whether severe or whether on the beginning part of it. Please express some message of hope to those persons who are listening now and those who will be listening or watch this show.
Well, I guess.
Don't all go at once.
Yes, what?
Who's going first?
Go ahead.
Colin, you go. Start us off.
Let me say this. If you are experiencing burnout, there is hope and there is healing for you. And as we mentioned, you've got to find that rest in Jesus. And a couple of things I'd suggest that you need to do. You need to take some action in order to be able to heal yourself. And one of the things you ought to do, for example, is to evaluate your options that you have. If you're having issues taking on too much stuff and you have a supervisor, oftentimes we can discuss what's going on with our supervisor, with our superiors. They can help us to deal with some stuff. And don't try to handle it on your own. Try to get support from others, your colleagues, somebody that's outside of your job, your pastor or somebody like that. And then you need to find ways to relax yourself. How many of us get exercise? I walk 5 miles today at 67. I take the time every day to spend in nature, communing with God, to get some time for myself. And you need to also create what I call is a prevention plan. If you don't have a plan that you can put in place, what you will discover is that you're going to work. You're not going to have the connection that you need with your clients. Next thing you're going to be out of step with yourself. You're going to feel burnt out. And you need to have a self-care routine. Create one for yourself. Set some times for yourself when you're going to do stuff. Set times for family. Set times when you're going to take breaks during the day so you could relieve your stress. And then what you ought to do also is, as I said before, the doctor doesn't heal themselves, Doctors do not heal themselves. Sometimes we try to solve our own problems ourselves when we need somebody else from the outside who can help us to be able to deal with. And another thing, final thing I want to say is this. Sometimes even the approaches that we use when we are dealing with people, sometimes we may need to look at those, because sometimes the approaches we use can be ones that cause us to burn out. And so sometimes we need to reevaluate our relationship with our clients, our responsibility to them, and then look at ways of being able to help the client to manage their burnout, as well as being able to manage our own as well.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Continue. Who else is gonna share? Anif, you could go ahead.
Okay. I was wondering, when you guys sent us these questions, I was thinking about them. How do I minister to people who are experiencing something they have never experienced? And I thought about it and I said, you know what? We're usually very good as counselors at recognizing when we're feeling tired, recognizing when we're feeling angry. We're good at teaching other people how to dig into those feelings and dig into the symptomology and understanding what's behind it, but we're often not good at doing it ourselves. So when you're starting to feel like this conflagration of symptoms, I mean, you're tired, you're angry, you're frustrated with other people, dig into that and understand that you're probably in one of the stages of burnout. You're in the beginning, you're in the middle, or you may be coming to the end. And then once you get there, once you understand what you're feeling, remember that this is not the end. Just because you want to quit, this is not the end. Even after a fire has taken down every piece of greenery and foliage in the area, life can still grow from that space. Forests will still come up, grass starts, but it takes rain, it takes time.
Yes.
There's a whole process behind it, and you have to go through that process yourself. You and the Lord need to go through that process of rejuvenation in order for growth to come back from that space. You don't just come back from destruction immediately. You have to take that time.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Please, one of our other panelists, Ibukun, Wale, please share a message of hope.
Jesus said that I am the vine, you are the branches. If you're not connected to the vine, you cannot bear fruit.
Yes.
What we're trying to do as helpers is bear fruit. If we're not connected, we wither away and we die. A lot of our burnout, we can to some extent prevent and avoid and even start to cure by finding that reconnection to the vine. And one of the things that I learned to do, that I had to learn to do, and I tell people, I tell my attorneys that I work with, I tell them, look, when you start to feel like you're burning out, when things are not working the way you can, and you want them to, and you're not able to help like you want to, I need you to go tap into your source. I'm a Christian. All of us here we're all believers in God. So I go back to God and I tell him, I don't have anything else to give, and please connect me back. Whatever.
Yes.
And I tell them, that's what I do. You need to find your thing. So it's for us and for the people around us that we care about, the people we have to work with who experience the same thing, that may not necessarily believe the same thing that we do. you still need to tap to some source. Whatever your source is, find it, tap into it. I also think that people should don't shy away from counseling, because as the people you're helping come to you and dump their load on you. I take mine and go dump it on somebody else, and then they can put it in the garbage bin or wherever they choose. But I go and dump it at a counselor's feet sometimes, because the good thing is they understand, because they're also in a helping profession. So they understand that you burn out. They understand that these things become overwhelming. So use counseling. It's a very, very helpful, very positive tool, and counselors can help you, channel you to other sources of help or assistance, or help you figure out different other ways to cope. So definitely tap back into God, tap back into Jesus Christ, and find you a good counselor.
Yeah, I received that. I wanted to, I'm just thinking about our viewers, right? And so there's some viewers that may be struggling with something that you said at the beginning, about, that you tell people to tap into their source, right? But something that I want to make sure whoever may have been, a little rubbed wrong by that, is that you listen to what else she said, that she shares with them who she recognizes her source to be. And so there's testimony, there's ministry in that conversation, and they're saying, hey, as your supervisor, as your lawyer, whatever it is, I'm a Christian, this is what I do. You figure out what you need to do, but I'm letting you know this is what I do. And I think that is a type of even invitation. If maybe these people don't know what their source is or who their source is, right? Without like telling them this is who it needs to be, right? Because that oftentimes causes people to not really want to listen to you. And so I receive all that you just said, Ibukun. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Wale?
Yes, if I had a message of hope, I want to stress this so much. It's okay to take time off. I think a lot of times, because it's seen as being mentally strong, it's seen as being, that it's a strong thing, it's a strength thing to like push through and to, fight through. I think what we do is we actually add gasoline to the fire when we're burning out. We just keep going, and we keep trying to tell ourselves that we can do it. We're capable. I think it's vital that when you start to feel broke, take time off, and it's okay. Don't for the workaholics, I'm one. Just resting or not doing anything, taking a day off, I'm like, it feels like I'm doing something wrong. And I think you have to start incorporating rest into your everyday schedule. So I think I even heard Brother Major say it, like take breaks in the day, so take days off, kind of make rest, make recreation something that you love to do that's going to revitalize you, a normal part of your routine, so that it will help you to not completely collapse when you're feeling down. So it is okay to rest.
Yeah. And Wale, I think you have said that to begin, and you're saying that to close again. Take time to rest. As you said, as you started, you were there was so much demands. People want you to be the other pastor or be at their every call. Then someone asks you, when is your actual day off? And that's important. So there are persons who might not be able to take a day off apart from the weekend. But within the week, as Ibukun is saying, that find that place where you can get that relaxation. She find that in Jesus. And of course, I know in other ways. And as a chaplain, Wale, you can attest to this, that as you go to an individual, you do not tell them this is the source that you should use. You might offer a source, but at the end of the day, it's important. And as a counselor, Anif, you make that so profound. when you find yourself start to see the very same signs that you've been telling people, you know, recognize it, and know that it starts there. It starts there. Recognize it and seek professional help, as London even has just alluded to. And even before we get to one of our questions, initially, Colin, you point out this fact, Elder, and I believe it is so profound, that when you are where you are with the students, with whoever you're counseling or helping, you are there. That's you, the other person, and the Holy Spirit. So there is God, you know, and I believe if we take these nuggets out of here, London, I believe that we can do a lot of good, not only in our own lives, but even in those people that we serve.
Yes, there's a minister that I haven't met face to face, but we're a part of the similar group on Instagram of female pastors, and she's at Howard University Divinity School, and you can find her on Facebook is B Leah, and that's BE space LEAH, and she's actually she's a part of this ministry. I think she's the founder of this ministry. I want to say it correctly. I think it's Salt. Let me say it correctly. Okay, it is Salt, Life, and Love. And she's actually doing some research on this particular topic around burnout amongst ministers, burnout amongst, I forgot how she phrased it, but it's pretty much helping professions. So like advocates, which Ibukun will fall in line with, many of us will fall in line with advocates, counselors, pastors, that sort of thing. And one thing that she promotes is, as what was just said already, I just want to reemphasize it, is putting rest into your day. That not just waiting, I'm going to go on vacation, or, I'm going to take a sabbatical, or, I have that one day of Sabbath rest, right? But putting rest into all 7 days of your life. And that will dramatically decrease your whatever burnout that you may be experiencing. So I'm super excited. I really believe that people have been blessed by this program, Larry. And what are we doing next? What do you want to tell the people?
Well, honestly, I've said it. Christ rest, and if He rested in the middle of a storm, what say you and I? Whatever we are engulfed in, whether it is through our helping profession, whether it is in our personal life experiences, take that break. Don't get burned down while Christ has actually bear that brunt of it for us.
Yes.
I think is Ibukun, who actually, stated, he reached that point in the Garden of Gethsemane. And even while he was at that point, he realized that it's not a good experience to feel good about and burn out. He calls for someone to help.
Yes.
And that's the ultimate example we have in Jesus. You have heard the panelists today, and I want you to just take it in and share it with your family, share it with your friends. From Colin Major, who comes to us from dealing with a cultural kaleidoscope of people from different environment, different countries in the University of the Bahamas, but how he's able to actually prevent himself from being burned out, or even being in there to actually hold on to the source and get out. To Ibukun, who dealing in the criminal justice system where people need help, and listening to these stories. Sometimes I can just imagine from my own experiences, listening to some, it's horrific, and to tap into those and even streamline hope. Sometimes you can find yourself being burned out, but take that time to know what your time is. As you have said, you know that your time or your limit is 10 and you stick to that. So persons must know what their limit is, and goes all the way to Alif, as you have said, as a counselor, you also need counseling.
Yes.
And these are profound takeaway, going right back to Whale as a pastor who sometimes believes Jesus himself. But we're not Jesus. Jesus is Jesus. We are like Jesus. And the best way sometimes to be like Jesus is to understand what he does when the curtain is closed.
Mm-hmm.
He prayed, he rested, he interact with friends. It's not all about doing miracles. One of the greatest miracles is taking care of the estate that God himself,
stewardship,
would have given us. So basically that's my last take here, and I just want to say thank you, panelists, for being a part of Zoom Hope Live, and not only the panelists, but we want to London also.
Yes, we want to say hey to the viewers. Glad that you're still with us. Please share once again. Share. If you're watching this on Facebook, there's also a YouTube link for those that you may know that don't have Facebook. And you know people who are running around like a chicken with their head cut off, and they feel like they're getting some type of glory from being burned out. Please share this message with that person so that we can, through these messages, infuse hope into your life.
Yes, thank you. So go ahead, have a social life. It's not a crime. Go ahead, relax. It's not a crime. Go ahead, get some sleep. It's not a time. Eat some food. It's not a crime. Thank you so much, panelists. Thanks to everyone. And this has been another exciting episode of Zoom Hope Live. Remember, like us, follow us, share us, ring that notification bell, and go over to Instagram, like us there. And of course, this same program will be premiered by Wednesday of this week on our YouTube channel. So may God bless you and may God keep you. As you help others, make sure that you help yourself. I am your host, Larry Green, and you have heard our co-host,
London Anderson.
All right. God bless you and have a beautiful evening.